that means a lot to some people. And so just because you disagree with what the powers say, doesn't mean you're not part of the administration.
Right.
Okay. Maybe I've said enough.
Anybody else?
1, 2, 3. How about 4 more? 4 more.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Maybe skips over for a little bit.
Sure.
I have a question. When you were growing up in Hickman, when your uncle was the president, your father was premier, and then later when your father was senator, you had a lot of illustrious guests come.
Excuse me?
You had a lot of special guests coming from around the country, around the world, who would visit you for seminars or lectures or just make appearances for dinner at your home. And your parents would entertain these guests from, again, all corners of the world, all corners of the country. Were there any particular guests that stood out to you during those years that you thought were just wonderful?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I guess one of the guests that did make an impression was that there was a Russian poet. Who was the famous Russian poet at that time? Huh? No.
Solzhenitsyn?
Not so. Solzhenitsyn, I met through Teddy because he was older, but he had a really long name. What? Yevchenko. Why was he interesting? Why? Because he had such a long name, and he had such a long, thin body, and he sort of spread over everything. So he was. I mean, I don't know. I didn't have long conversations with a number of them. I mean, I met many more interesting people when I was older, and Teddy was my uncle then, and he would have us over for dinner, and I could actually talk to people like Nelson Mandela and Lech Walesa. I was much older, and I could have those kind of conversations. When I was 8 years old, I would curtsy, but we didn't have, it was not as long conversations. People would come over to the house, and they would all be interesting and important, but we were not really having long conversations with them. And I left my house, as I said, when I was 15, to be with boys. So that's probably what I was most interested in. So that's, when I look back, there's so many missed opportunities if I could have taken advantage of all the fascinating people who came, but I didn't all the time. I mean, we did go, for instance, when we went down the river, which we did a lot, with John Glenn, who was extremely impressive, and Jim Whittaker, who was the first American up Everest. I mean, those two people we did spend a lot of time with. And my mother loved, you asked about my mother, she loved playing the poetry game, go around the table. Everybody writes a verse. Who wrote the best verse? And you have to guess. Who wrote the best verse? You voted. Who wrote the best verse and who wrote it? And Robert Frost was forced to play that game. I mean, you can see our house. It's kind of ridiculous. But the people that I really got to talk to and meet were more through Teddy, just because I was older than him.
All right, next question is over here.
On the federal level, the vice president is sometimes regarded as invisible or kind of forgettable. On the state level, did the lieutenant governors share a similar fate? And secondarily, I wondered, what advice would you give to Westmore to revive the Democratic Party?
That's a good question. So I was very lucky being the lieutenant governor. When I started out, I had staff of about 3, and by the time I ended, I was basically in charge of half the government. And that was largely because my governor cared about primarily education and the environment. And I cared about crime, children, youth, and families, transportation, and environmental and economic development. So he decided, and he cared about smart growth. So he didn't really care about those other issues as much, and I did. And I had a really good staff. So I had a blast. And I'm just gonna boast, I really made a difference. I mean, in crime, for instance, we had something called a hotspots program where we reduced crime 33% in the highest crime neighborhoods in 3 years. And so I could tell you that what the president is doing to reduce crime is not the way to reduce crime. And I can, if you want, go in great detail how you can reduce crime without in an effective way, which is getting to know the people in the community, talking to them, getting to trust you. You don't wear a mask, but I won't, because that's not really what you're interested in. If you ask me what I think the big issues are in the future, one, the two issues that I've worked on, which I don't think any Democrat has really focused on, is one, retirement reform. Half of all Americans have nothing safe for retirement. And I started a program to help people save for retirement when at Georgetown. When I started, no state had passed legislation to make it easy, and now 18 states have. I can go into that in greater detail if you want to hear. Two, I've focused on the fact that I'm going to end with this, just so you know, because it's a big issue for me. I'm going to talk about this for about 2 minutes. The last year of the Biden administration, I worked at the Navy on shipbuilding and shipyards. And I was supposed to recruit welders and machinists to shipyards, because you may not know this, but 53% of all ships now are made in China. 47% are made by Japan and Korea. We make 0.02% of the ships. We are way behind in making ships, and so my job was to try to find more people who could build ships. I soon learned that, for instance, in one shipyard, they hired 2,000 people and 75% had quit in the first year. In another shipyard, there were 18,000 bad welds. You get my point? So I realized the problem wasn't just workers, the problem was our shipyards. So I started a program called No Shipyard Left Behind. And when I was describing the problem with shipyards, a number of people said, Kathleen, that is a waste of your time. The next war is going to be a cyber war. That's what you should be focused on. And in fact, my office was right next to the Navy's cyber security people. So I talked to them a bit. So after I left this administration, I noted that this administration had fired the heads of cybersecurity in the Pentagon, the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI. So I was worried about that. So I called somebody who had taught about cyber at Naval Academy and said, what's going on? He said, Kathleen, it's far worse than that. If you want to open a brothel in Las Vegas, you need a license. I just thought you'd like to know that. I'm trying to lighten up this talk. I'm thinking, what can I say that can wake them up? If you want to be a software engineer, you don't need a license to do anything. No licenses for software engineers. Yes, a license for brothel owners, okay? Interesting. There are no standards for basically anything that goes in your body. And so Dick Cheney realized that his heart valve that goes in his body was made in China, and he took it out because he knows that the person in China who makes it could destroy it. As in Estonia, everything that was associated with software, cyber, was thrown out for 10 days. And you know how they got into it? Refrigerators. Because your refrigerator has a machine. And you can get into everything you use. This machine made. There is no, in our country, you know, we had something called Ralph Nader, who made sure that all the machines were made strong, right? Unsafe at speed. But we don't have that for software. There is no consumer protection for software. So I want to start a movement that says we should have consumer protection for software so that it is safe, secure at the start, which it is in Europe. So my goal is that we have secure software so that we make sure that what we use cannot be destroyed as it was in Estonia, so that Dick Cheney can have a secure heart, just if you had a secure heart, and so that we can be safe here in America. Thank you very much.
But it's love and wisdom and compassion toward one another. Feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
Thank you. Can I just tell you what Skip has done for me? When he keeps a beautiful garden for my father next to RFK Stadium, and he keeps a beautiful garden for my grandson Gideon right next door called Gideon's Garden. And I visited it today, as I do periodically, and I am extremely, extremely grateful for what Skip has done for me and my family. So I want you to all give a round of applause.
The plants down there, I started 2 years ago to go perennial. And I knew certain plants were going to come up. But in that period of time, it must be pollination, because all these plants that I never planted, never put a seed, are popping up. So I never know from one year to the next now what's going to come up. But at least it's trending toward being a perennial.
You're doing a great job. Thank you.
We have something for you. Anyone have any other questions?
I think they've done it. I think, you know what, you always deal with an audience, you want them wanting more, not like, any more, or we're gonna go.
We have this for you. The members of the team who put this together, Terrence, Lindsay, Walter, and I.
Well, as you can imagine, I love red, white, and blue.
So we'll go ahead and open it. And at the same time, we handed out little cards in the beginning. Does anyone have a card that has a marking on it? Look at your cards and tell me if it has a marking.
So we handed out cards earlier today, and on those gray cards it has a marking on it.
Should be a letter, designation.
You guys have a marking on your card. Please just raise your hand. You have a marking, or you have one? Do you have any other marking?
No. What do we have?
All right, you got the marking of a C C.
See?
Any other markings on you guys' gray cards?
This is lovely.
Oh, sweet.
Not lovely?
Yeah.
There's something different.
So handsome.
Any other markings
This
on
is
the
birthday.
cards?
It's 100th birthday.
No.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
We have, I wish more people would have come because there would have been more marked cards. There
So
are
I think if we just ask maybe a simple question, and whoever gets the answer right, you can, I think you have 2 more gifts there.
You want me to ask a simple question?
I've got a question.
Okay.
What would your father tell the Republican senators these days? President.
Well, it's hard to tell people. The question is, how do you talk with people? And it depends. Are you in a private meeting? Are you in a public meeting? Are you organizing? Just yelling at people for the fun of it doesn't really help. So I think you always have to think, what's your goal? What's your goal? And I think, I think it's what senator, are they up for reelection? Like Joni Ernst, she made a big mistake when she said everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
So she couldn't run again.
Right.
So the question is, who is up for reelection? What do you say? It's not what you say to them, it's how you organize in that state, and who their constituents are. People can only listen to what's going to win them votes. That's my feeling right now. So it's not what you say to them, it's what you say to people who can win votes. That's,
Well,
otherwise you're just talking to
you're
yourself.
not being courageous.
You're just talking to yourself. That's what I think.
You just need to.
Yeah, they can't hear. If you've ever talked to a child who's 5 years old, they can't hear. They really can't hear. And this group really can't hear.